Right, folks, Eight Sleep Boxing Repeat. We're back with another big fight preview for the upcoming Cruiserweight contest live on Sky Sports. Chris Billam-Smith versus Isaac Chamberlain. It's a pleasure to be joined by two of ESBR's finest, Paul and Elliot. How are we doing, chaps?
Good, man. I'm good. It's nice to be here. Really looking forward to it. Looking forward to this one.
All good, mate. Thanks for the intro. Very nice.
No problem at all, mate. All true, all true. So as I say, Chris Billam-Smith versus Isaac Chamberlain. Chris Billam-Smith's been calling out for this sort of homecoming show in Bournemouth. Massive night for him, first night as part of this, sort of with Sky Sports and Boxer. No easy opponent in Isaac Chamberlain. Obviously probably most known for the Lawrence Okolie defeat, but in great form, 4 quick knockout victories. Just interested, first of all, how do you see the fight going? What are your thoughts? Go to you first, Elliot, mate. Chris Billam-Smith, as I say, massive night for him. How do you see him doing against Chamberlain?
Thing is, I feel like I know what Paul's going to say, so I feel pressure here to articulate my argument well. I think that's a close fight, mate. I reckon it's a really, really close fight. I'm struggling a little bit to call it because, I've looked at Billam-Smith a bit more probably than I have seen Chamberlain, to be perfectly honest. I've seen obviously both fights he had against McCarthy. I watched him versus Rickpour. And with Chamberlain, similarly, I know he's been fighting obviously on Channel 5, etc., but I saw his last fight. Saw actually the fight he had against Oakley as well. So it's one of those ones where you're going, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm leaning a bit towards Billam-Smith just because also the activity factor about it as well. He's been a lot more obviously active. But then I'm also looking at it going, Chamberlain went the full distance with Oakley, which is in its way very impressive. So I can't see Billam-Smith knocking him out, frankly. And I saw obviously, Billam-Smith went the distance with Rip or lost a narrow fight in that one. So I think it'll probably be a Billam-Smith points victory for me. But equally, if Paul argues the opposite to that, I'm not gonna lambast him for doing so.
Yeah, I know there's no odds that have came out yet that I could find. I imagine Billam-Smith would go in as a favourite. It's sort of interesting you touched on going the distance with Okolie. Arguably, sort of both pieces of form these two lads are known for are sort of close-ish decision losses. Obviously, at Chamberlain, as you say, to Okolie in points, and then Billam-Smith to Rickpour. Just put it to you, Paul. Elliot reckons you're going to come with a slightly different viewpoint. Would he be right?
Yeah, he would be right. And it's nothing to do with the fact that he's one of my favourite fighters in the world, along with AJ. So no bad intended. But no, in all seriousness, it's a cracking fight. It's a fight that, it was talked about, I'm pretty sure, a few, 3 or 4 years ago when both were still undefeated. But I'm glad it didn't happen then, because we've got it now, and it's a bigger fight. You could argue, especially after Jay Pataya has come out and said that he wouldn't mind taking the winner in this. This is kind of like a world title eliminator, really. I know it's for the European and Commonwealth belts, but for me, it is a really, really close fight. And you can, in a way, you can kind of look at both of their records and say that they've gone on a similar trajectory. Obviously, Billam-Smith's had one more fight. They've both lost once, but they've both come on leaps and bounds from their loss. I think that the Chamberlain one, I remember at the time it was billed as British beef, and it certainly didn't live up to it. I know it was a boring fight, to say the least, and it was just kind of probably too early for Chamberlain, I think. And it sounds funny as well. At the time, I don't think Chamberlain looked so much smaller than Okolie, and obviously Okolie's one of the biggest cruiserweight in the world. But since then, Chamberlain looks like he's grown into a man more. He's got his man strength. He does look like he's filled out into the cruiserweight, into his cruiserweight body. And then obviously he lost to Okolie, and then you look at Billam-Smith, and his loss came in the tight one against Rickpour. Could have argued it the other way. A few people think that if it wasn't for the knockdown, or the count or whatever it was, can't really remember now, that it might have gone in Billam-Smith's way. But yeah, cracking fight. But just to disagree with Elliot, like we seem to on almost every big fight breakdown. I'm just edging it slightly towards Isaac Chamberlain. It's you don't want to say often we say it's a 50-50 fight with fellas when really you do know who's going to win, whereas this, I think you can truly say is a 50-50. The telling factor for me is that, yes, although Billam-Smith's been more active and has probably better wins on his record, I actually think Billam-Smith's quite easy to hit. I don't think he moves his head enough. I look at his fight against Vasyl Dushar, I think you call him, or Dukar, and he was getting caught with a hell of a lot of shots against an opponent who's not as good as Isaac Chamberlain, in my opinion. I completely agree with Elliot. I think this is destined for the full 36 minutes. I'm going to edge towards a Chamberlain points decision. I think Isaac Chamberlain is better in every department than Chris Billam-Smith, bar the power. I think he's quicker. I think he's got better movement, a better boxing IQ. The only thing is, I think Billam-Smith does hit harder. But in saying that, Chamberlain does have a good few knockouts of his own. But I don't see him getting Billam-Smith out of there because seems to have a granite chin and doesn't mind taking a shot. And the only thing that's making me wary of my prediction is the fact that it is in Bournemouth, and I really just hope that the judges score how they see it, and that we're not back here, next Sunday after the fight, humming and hawing about another poor judge's decision or anything. So I hope the right man does win, and for me, I think that will be Isaac Chamberlain.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you said and how much both fighters have improved. I think they're certainly two of the most improved fighters. Definitely in the cruiserweight division, perhaps in the country. Do you think, Paul, there's maybe a sense that Chamberlain's been slightly overlooked as an opponent for Billam-Smith? Because, as you say, he's, in terms of a lot of the technical aspects, you would end Chamberlain, and you're already starting to see some people chatting about the Reactor rematch for Billam-Smith and pushing on for a world title shot. So where, in terms of Billam-Smith's opponents, do you think you would rank Chamberlain? Obviously, McCarthy and Reactor are the sort of two most notable names, and then you've got, you mentioned Dukar, you've got Dylan Brejon, who beat for the European. Where would you rank Chamberlain in terms of Billam-Smith's opponents to date?
I might get a bit of stick for this, but I think it's his toughest fight, personally. I think that looking at Isaac Chamberlain, I think if you're going to just judge Chamberlain on the Coley defeat, you're in for a shock, because since then, he's obviously changed trainer. There was a whole hoo-ha about when he was getting trained with Ted Bammy, his uncle, and there was stuff going on behind the scenes. And now, he's a lot bigger. He's, that was 4 years ago, I think that was, or something now, that fight. So, that's a lifetime ago in boxing terms, really. Yes, he has been inactive, but I still think he's the toughest opponent. Maybe on a par with Reactor. I'll maybe give him that. But I do think that if Chamberlain had fought Tommy McCarthy, and I know Tommy McCarthy is a fellow countryman of mine, but I do think that Isaac Chamberlain would have beaten him. So, I'd say probably his toughest, if not his second toughest, just behind Reactor. Definitely.
What about you, Elliot? Would you agree with Paul there in terms of, how much of a test this is for Billam-Smith?
No, I would actually probably agree with Paul there. Yeah, I think Reactor is probably the best opponent that he's faced, just based on where you've seen him go as well, and the run that he's been on recently. Obviously, there's Juma sort of stoppages. I think obviously deserves credit for those. I think it's probably, when you look at these guys in the British rankings, you've got sort of a Coley, Reactor, these two. I think that's fair. I do think those other two obviously stand a bit above these two guys at the moment. But I would agree with Paul. I think obviously when you're looking at it really as a split between McCarthy and Chamberlain. I just think, kind of like what Paul was saying, actually, I agree with what Paul was saying about Chamberlain coming on and improving, and I think physically he'd have too much for McCarthy as well. So yeah, I'd put this as Billam-Smith's second toughest fight. Yeah,
for what it's worth, I think I would agree with both of you. Obviously, Reactor, stylistically is a world apart to Isaac Chamberlain. Tommy McCarthy, you could say, technically a very sound boxer, but maybe lacking some of the physical attributes, whereas Chamberlain's sort of got a nice blend of, being technically very sound, good movement, as Paul says, but also, a lot more physically strong, especially now again, as you mentioned, Paul. So yeah, it's definitely an intriguing matchup. The question that we always, seem to resolve these with is what's next? I think you mentioned the Opataya fight, Paul. I think he will be out for a while. That double broken jaw he suffered against Bradis a couple of weeks ago. You've got big domestic clashes. I just come to you again first with this one, Elliot. Where do you see the winner of this going? Do you see perhaps a different route depending on who the winner is, or what are your thoughts?
No, it's a really hard question. So I was having a little think about this before I came on this video, and the answer is I'm not 100% sure, because if you put obviously Reactor in that mix as well, obviously he's chasing a world title fight as well. Obviously you've got Oakley sitting as a champion, you've got Opataya, like you were saying. It's been mentioned as next, but with that injury, how long does that keep him out for? Makabu obviously as a champion as well, and don't let me say the other one. So obviously there's kind of a lot of guys that are around there that are sort of that you could put them in with. But then I look at other names that are kind of in those rankings. Obviously, still kind of like the likes of like Jack kicking around. You still got Masterneck, those sort of names, Dorticos, those sort of guys. I still think those fighters. I mean, no, Jack's getting on a bit now, so I probably would back these guys to probably beat him if it came down to it. But some of the other guys that are in those rankings, I'm still not 100% convinced that either of these guys would necessarily kick up to that level. I think I still need to be convinced of that. Whereas, example, if you said stick Riakporhe in with like, I don't know, Makabu, yeah, it'd be a tough fight, but I'd have more faith in him coming through it, or like a Glowacki or those sort of names. So to be honest with you, I don't know. Actually, going to simply say I'm not really sure, because I still feel like they're. I mean, I know this is for, I know this is for the Commonwealth and European title, and almost in a way, I kind of think that's the level that these guys currently are. So if you're talking about shooting them into kind of like a world top 10, top 15, I'm still not convinced from what I've seen so far that they'll cope with that. So I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to sit on the fence and say I don't know, but it'll need fairly careful matchmaking. Whereas someone like Riakporhe, I think, could be comfortably let go a bit into those upper echelons than these two.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all for your confusion with this. The cruiserweight division has sort of become a bit of a mess in the last couple of years. I think it's good sort of what Sky are trying to do, and they're trying to bring a lot of these, cruiserweights, under the same banner. There's obviously rumours of Coley ending up there as well. Just again, come to you with that one, Paul. Where do you see the winner of this going?
Yeah, it is a really tricky question, and I can't blame either of you for sitting on the fence for this one. I think it's obviously it all depends on who wins, and I think if you're, put yourself in Chris Billam-Smith's shoes, yeah, okay, say Jay Opetaia does want to fight, but he's going to be maybe not able to fight for another 6 months. I don't know. You're going to want something in the interim. So I'm thinking, if you're Billam-Smith and you're fighting on Sky now, and so is Riakporhe, do they make that as a final, like a one-time final eliminator for a world title shot against, Opetaia, against Makabu, one of them, even a Coley, if a Coley does go to Sky, if you're Chris Billam-Smith, you might think, right, I've got past Isaac Chamberlain, beaten Tommy McCarthy, etc. The only blemish on my record is the Richard Riakporhe. I want to get rid of that first, level the scores, and then have a world title shot. If you're Isaac Chamberlain, I think I somehow remember that him and Riakporhe are friends, so I'm pretty sure Dave said before that they wouldn't fight each other. I don't know whether that's the same now. It might be different a few years on, but I remember definitely a few years ago that they said they wouldn't have fought each other, which is kind of disappointing in a way, but you can't really make them fight each other, I suppose. But I think Isaac Chamberlain, I don't even see with the activity, I think Isaac Chamberlain, if he did win against Billam-Smith, I don't think he would mind waiting for the Opetaia shot, for example, if it was in 6 months' time, because he's been used to fighting not as regularly. I think he's had 5 or 6 fights since the Coley fight, and that was almost 4 years ago. So if he's waiting another 6 months, I know he is a gym rat, so he does stay in the gym, but I think if Isaac Chamberlain wins, I don't think he would mind waiting for a world title shot. Then you've also got your people hanging about, like, isn't Jack Massey, doesn't he hold the IBO title?
Yeah.
I know for me, the title means nothing, but even a fight against Jack Massey in the interim, decent fight. So where do I see the winner going? I think the winner is definitely knocking on the door of a world title shot, but do I see it happening next? More than likely not.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, as we sort of all said, especially if you're Billam-Smith, because you're sort of putting that dilemma. You could fight Riakporhe. It's a massive fight, arguably financially maybe bigger than a lot of the world title shots, bar probably a Coley. But then if you lose to Riakporhe again, someone you've lost to again, not in the world title shot, it's a more difficult way back than if you lose, say, to an Opetaia who should beat Bradis or a Coley, so, a lot of factors to weigh up. But in the interest of time, chaps, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks a million for coming on. Some great points from both of you. Really enjoyed that. And massively looking forward to the fight. As I say, you can catch it on Sky Sports. and you know, as we say, you know, surely, you know, should be a great fight for the cruiserweight division. But that'll be all. Thanks again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. We'll catch you on the YouTube channel very soon. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.